We are going to call this workshop of the Martin County School Board to order. If you would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mrs. Falls, will you please call the roll?
Mr. DiTerlizzi?
Here.
Mrs. Roberts? Mrs. Powers?
Here.
Mrs. Pritchett?
Here.
Russell?
Here, thank you. At this time, we will have open to the public. We do not have any comment cards. At this time, is there anyone here that would like to speak? This concludes public comment. Moving on to our school board policies. Item number 5.01, policy number 9211, parent organizations, booster clubs, and other outside support organizations. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 2 of 6, booster clubs and other outside support organizations. Third paragraph, superintendent, select second option. Page 4 of 6, financial requirements, select paragraphs A, F, G, and H. Page 5 of 6, select option 2. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Yes, Ms. Roberts.
So I had a couple things. I want to ask Diane Falls first. Are we coming up with a 6605 crowdfunding policy sometime soon? Okay, so the language in there about the 6605 can stay in. On page 2 of 6, the 1, 2, 3, 4, the sixth paragraph down, where it talks about the red book, I don't think we should refer to the chapter. Chapter 8 is actually internal funds, so I think we should just say, shall be in accordance with the financial and program cost accounting and reporting for Florida school boards, parentheses, red book.
Okay.
And just, does that work for everybody?
Does that work for everyone?
And then one other thing on page 4, where we're picking support organizations must provide the following documents, which is the 501c3 letter, the description of programs, projects, and activities, a balance sheet, and the copies of federal tax reports for the most recent year. I think we should also include C, which is any filing with the Florida Department of State, Division of Corporations, and Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. That way, we would be sure that they were a corporation in good standing.
Okay.
Everybody,
Anyone have a problem with that? Okay.
CC,
Both of you okay? Good. Okay, great.
that's the only other things I had on that one.
Thank you. Well, if there are no other changes, we will move on to our next policy.
Oh, wait, hold on. Florida Department of Agriculture?
That's the Charitable Contributions Act piece.
So, but if they're a 501c3 and they're not accepting charitable, I guess they would still be.
So they
all
don't,
these-
it says if applicable on that one, but the one I was really more concerned with the Florida Department of Corporations, because that's the only way you would know that they were current with the Florida Department of Corporations.
Yeah, because they could not be required to have the,
Sure.
to file with the Department of Agriculture.
Sure.
And they're not accepting.
Right. Yeah.
Are you good to move forward, everyone? Okay. Item number 5.02, policy number 9700, relations with special interest groups. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 5 of 6, prizes and scholarships. Second subparagraph 1 only, delete subparagraphs 2 and 3. Surveys and questionnaires, select the option. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board on this policy? Yes, Ms. Roberts?
On page 4 of 5, actually I don't have a 5 of 5, it refers to some administrative procedures, one for crowdfunding and one for 2416. So can we be sure, Mrs. Falls, that once we do accept the administrative procedures, that those get posted onto our information-only thing so we know what those were? Thank you, that's all I had.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we will move on to our next policy. Item number 5.03, policy number 9700.01, advertising and commercial activities. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 1 of 2, select option 2, subparagraph A, 1 through 3. Page 2 of 2, select subparagraph B, 1 through 6. Select subparagraph C, 1 only, and select subparagraph D, 1 only. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board on this policy?
I just had one question about the D, the market research.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you explain why we are saying we would permit advertising in this district facilities and school district property and the categories and forums with the guidelines for market research surveys or polls related to commercial activities?
That would be an option, obviously, at the board's discretion that we may want to look in the future if we did enter into any kind of corporate partnerships or anything to do with more corporate advertising than we've traditionally done. It's not something that would be required, but we recommended it in case any type of engagement that we entered into asked that of us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, that concludes our policies for today. Just a reminder that everyone will see these policies a couple more times as we bring them back to the board meetings for approval. We will now have open to the board. Mr. DiTerlizzi, do you have anything?
I don't have anything today, thank you.
Ms. Roberts?
Nope, I'm good, thanks.
Ms. Pritchett? Ms. Powers? Superintendent Maine? Okay, this workshop is now adjourned. You good? We are going to call the special meeting of the Martin County School Board to order. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. DiTerlizzi and a second by Ms. Pritchett. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We will now move on to our action-only item. Item number 3.01, it's renewal, statewide voluntary pre-kindergarten provider contract. Are there any questions from the board? Yes, Ms. Roberts?
I'm just wondering why we're seeing this now. Was it not ready when we had our regular meeting, or? I mean, the contract stated July 9th. I'm just wondering why it's,
Yeah, it was originally scheduled to be on the special meeting, but then it got moved to tonight, so I could get clarification.
well, I mean,
for
I
you.
just think that the more stuff we do at a regular meeting, I think that's where people are expecting to see it. I
Yeah,
just think that's-
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you. Mhm.
Are there any other questions? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Roberts, a second by Mr. DiTerlizzi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We will now have open to the board. Does anyone have anything that they would like to say? Ms. Roberts?
So I know that our sound system in this room that we have done so much work on is sometimes challenging, whether it's Mr. DiTerlizzi calling in or whether it's the speaker that's up there. Can we, and I appreciate everything that ET does and how they are managing all of this, but maybe it's time to ask an outside source to come in and look at what we have going on here and at least give us some idea of whether there's something we could be doing differently or something, between Derek's presentation when it goes up here and it gets fallen off, and Mike trying to call in, and if Amy or anybody else is trying to call in, the inability to be able to communicate and do that, I think is really frustrating for the board and probably sad for us, because if we want to participate, it puts us in a position where we really can't participate in a meaningful way. So I'm asking the superintendent, maybe if you can do something and figure out, I'm sure there's other firms out there that do this. They're doing a lot, but I think that there's other firms that are specifically dealing with this kind of thing, you might be able to help us. Thank you, that's all I had.
And I had a conversation with Mr. Hall last night and found out that Teams doesn't work with Apple very well. So that was the problem, Diane, I was having when I couldn't log into the executive session last week, was I was using my iPhone. So he instructed me to get Chrome, and I put it on my phone, and we'll see at the next one, that next time I have to use it, if that'll work. I'm going to test it at some point, but the reception for me last at the trim meeting was, it was like you were like this talking to me, and I couldn't hear it. It was just, everybody was muffled, unless you got right into the microphone, and that was just, it was really a waste of my time, because I couldn't really understand what everybody was saying.
And I know we've changed where first we were doing the Zoom meetings and then we were doing Google for a little bit and then we had to change to something else. I mean, I know that we keep changing what we're doing, but I think somebody would be able to help us. Thanks.
Superintendent Main, do you have anything? Okay, well, this meeting is now adjourned.